We move on to portfolio questions. The first portfolio this afternoon is Deputy First Minister responsibilities, finance and local government, parliamentary business and veterans. I remind members that questions 1 and 3 have been grouped together and that I'll take any supplementaries on these questions after both questions have been answered. If a member wishes to request a supplementary question, they should press their Request to Speak button during the relevant question. Question number 1, Tim Eagle.
To ask the Scottish Government when it will bring forward proposals to reform the non-domestic rates system.
Minister.
Thank you for the question. It is something that is on my agenda very immediately. The Scottish Government, we are constantly evolving and reforming the non-domestic rate system that we have, given the ever-changing circumstances that business find itself under, and including looking specifically at retail, hospitality and leisure. So very soon, before summer, we're actually going to be having a meeting with business leaders from across the sector to start the process of a comprehensive review on non-domestic rates, which will build upon our commitment to examine the impact and configuration of all our reliefs in advance of the next re-evaluation on the 1st of April 2029.
Tim Eagle.
I'm not alone in calling for non-domestic rate reform. New MSP Jack Middleton, actually, from the SNP, has said there are flaws in the system, and it's a top priority. Even the SNP manifesto promised to rebalance the system. But I've spoken with businesses in Murray, from funeral parlours to clothes shops, who are describing real pain and real uncertainty about their future. We need a clear timeline for change. Now, I don't expect that full timeline right now. So can I request that we get a ministerial statement that draws out what the Minister has just said, so that we can, and all businesses in Scotland, can be absolutely clear on the timeline and moving forward for change?
Minister.
Thank you for the follow-up. We are going to be giving our medium-term update next week on the budget and the statement, so we will come back on that. As I said, it's on my agenda to meet with business leaders before summer from the 6 priority business areas, so that is something that is on my agenda and something that will be priority as we go into the recess and summer.
Claire Baker.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government how it will take forward plans to rebalance the non-domestic rate system.
Minister.
So, as I said, this is something that we want to make sure that the non-domestic rate system offers the best environment for business. And that's in terms of business growth, investment, but also competitiveness, to make sure that business has predictability, stability and a line of sight as to what's coming down the tracks. I also have to acknowledge that the important role that non-domestic rates play in the income of our funding for public services as well, just over £3 billion. So, as I said, comprehensive review is going to be starting on the non-domestic rates, and we will be engaging with business to help shape how the system operates in the future, one that's fair, transparent and accountable.
Claire Baker.
Thank you. The Minister will be aware that a big issue is empty properties, and local businesses regularly raise concerns about costs and barriers to taking on premises. While £20 million of UK Government money is going to be invested in Kirkcaldy Town Centre, does the Minister accept that we need to have a business rate system that actively supports new businesses to occupy vacant units and enhance our high streets? And when can we expect to see progress on potentially widening the scope of the Fresh Start relief as agreed by Parliament last week?
Minister.
So, as you know, we've agreed to the Fresh Start campaign that we discussed last week, which the amendment came from the right, from the Labour benches. And we're looking at this type of relief as the only type that we actually have in Great Britain. But we are very mindful of the tax avoidance risk that is associated with that relief. So in the round, when we are looking at the review and moving forward with business rate review and reform, the Fresh Start and occupying empty properties will be part of that.
Liam Carr.
I think that's Very important question that Claire Bake has just asked, because when I asked the First Minister what his support for DC Thompson's Fresh Start campaign was actually worth in terms of action, his answer was very vague and non-committal, and I'm afraid the Minister's answer there was pretty much the same. So can I ask directly, does the Minister support the Fresh Start campaign, and if so, what action, concrete action, will she take to implement it? Minister.
The member will be aware that we only had that debate last week. It is something that we are committed to exploring and working on. We're working with officials, and I'll be very happy to write to him as we firm up our time frame, as I will have met with the business leaders before summer. But this is something that is hot off the press and something that we are working on. So I'll be very happy to write to you when we have a time frame in mind.
Gary Bowes.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I appoint members to my register of interest as a sitting councillor in Falkirk. Tax incremental financing, or TIF, has been incredibly successful in Falkirk in unlocking the economic potential of the area, delivering 2,000 jobs and £36 million of infrastructure in the first half of a 25-year project. What assurances can the Minister give that any changes to non-domestic rates will support and enhance the TIF schemes, like the successful example in Falkirk District, so as not to put that vital economic growth at risk?
Minister.
So there are 6 TIF projects that were set up as part of a pilot scheme. The impact on place and local economy will be assessed as the investments near completion, allowing ministers to come to a view on further use of this funding tool. The review of non-domestic rates will be comprehensive and will include consideration of how the NDR system can best support and encourage growth and investment.
Paul Sweeney.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. The recent removal of listed buildings relief for rates has caused a number of unintended consequences which have been very damaging. The cost of servicing the rates for empty listed buildings and then raising the capital to renovate them has proven to be prohibitive for many projects. Will the Minister undertake to look at reviewing this with COSLA to introduce an appeals process where it makes sense to allow for reliefs to enable renovations to happen?
Minister.
That's something I would be happy to take away and have a look at. As I take this discussion forward before summer, I would be quite happy to engage with you, Mr Sweeney, on that before the summer recess.
Don Black.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And it's welcome that the Minister has given a clear commitment to consider carefully what improvements the Government could make as quickly as possible to ensure that all businesses can continue to invest and not have their issues arising from business rates impeding their success. So can the Minister expand on the steps the Scottish Government will be taking to engage with the wider business stakeholders out with hospitality as part of this process to ensure that their voices are also informing any decisions made?
Minister.
So, as I've said a couple of times, the first step in this is going to be a comprehensive meeting with business leaders from across the portfolio on 6 priority areas: leisure, hospitality, tourism, etc., to make sure that we gather, to make sure that I listen, to make sure that we understand the asks and the offer, to ensure that Scotland is the place that business is welcomed, that we give that predictability and stability, and ultimately to be able to grow the economy. So this is in the round. It's happening just before summer, and that is really going to be the first start that we take forward to make sure that we are taking forward those reviews as we head away from recess into August and beyond.
Question number 2, Mark Griffin.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what discussions it has had with COSLA regarding the pay negotiations for 2026-27.
Deputy First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I can confirm that I had an introductory meeting with COSLA on the 28th of May, and I will meet again with COSLA next Thursday, along with the Cabinet Secretary for Public Service Reform. And although the Scottish Government has no formal role in local government pay negotiations, we worked very closely with COSLA to confirm funding flexibilities and additional funding that allowed COSLA to provide a fair and an affordable 2-year pay deal worth 7.64% across 25-26 and 26-27.
Mark Griffin.
I thank the Deputy First Minister for that answer. After years of cuts, councils are struggling to put an offer on the table that meets the cost of living pressures for their staff. year on year we have these disputes and disruptions. We have rubbish piling up on Edinburgh streets during the festival, school and nursery closures, and the annual late intervention from the government that resolves that. And I just wonder what more constructive, regular discussions can happen between national and local government to break that cycle of continued dispute and then late intervention to solve that after the public have already been disrupted, and how the government plan to formalise that.
Deputy First Minister.
I thank Mark Griffin for his supplementary question. He will know from my former role that I spent a good amount of time with our teaching trade unions and local government trying to negotiate an agreement in relation to reducing teacher class contact, and we were able to do that through joint negotiation, but it did take time and it caused unnecessary stress and concern for parents and carers because we thought we might be about to be in receipt of some industrial action. So we had to work at pace to get to that point. I don't want, as a Deputy First Minister, to get to that stage. I actually want us to have a much more strategic approach to how we negotiate in relation to pay. That work was led by my predecessor across government, and I want to continue that. I had a very helpful discussion with Ros Foyer, who joined the event that the Cabinet Secretary and attended on public service reform only on Monday, to talk a little more about how we can have that strategic overview. I'd be more than happy to hear any suggestions that Mr Griffin has on that, but we have to work in close partnership with local government and with our trade unions. And I think the point the member makes in relation to disrupting services is well made, and I'll take forward the suggestions he's made today to that end with our engagement with COSLA next Thursday.
Question number 4, Jenny Young.
To ask the Scottish Government for its response to warnings issued on 27 May 2026 by the Institute for Fiscal Studies that, if earnings in Scotland grow in line with the rest of the UK, Scotland could face a deficit of over £6 billion by 2030.
Deputy First Minister.
Presiding Officer, governments across these islands face significant pressures on public finances, and these challenges have intensified in recent months due to global instability. Nonetheless, last summer we published the Medium-Term Financial Strategy, which sets out the scale of the challenge and the action that is required. This was reinforced through the spending review and portfolio efficiency reform plans, which were agreed in January, led by Cabinet Secretaries across Scottish Government. Additionally, I met with the IFS last week to discuss its reports and findings in more detail, including learnings for Scottish Government to inform our next steps.
Jenny Young.
I thank the Deputy First Minister for that response. The interventions that she references were made when we thought the budget deficit would be £5 billion, and now if these projections for earnings growth turn out to be more optimistic than what will transpire, it's quite likely that that will increase by a further £1 billion. So the Scottish Government has a budget of around £60 billion, and this would be a £6 billion deficit. So more than or around 10% of the entire Scottish budget. The IFS have said Scotland faces a fiscal reckoning with spending cuts or tax rises on the way. So can I ask the Deputy First Minister which one it's going to be?
Deputy First Minister.
I thank the member for her question. I hope she knows I'm taking a keen interest in these matters, given my responsibilities as Deputy First Minister, but I have to work in partnership, of course, with the Cabinet Secretary for Public Service Reform, which is exactly why the event we held on Monday was so important to that end. The Government has to work and meet and balance our budget every year. We do not have borrowing powers that exist in other parts of the United Kingdom. The member will well understand that. But the discussion I had with the IFS was important, as was the engagement that we've already had with the SFC. But this all goes back to the work that Ivan McKee is leading, actually, in relation to public service reform. And I really want to engage on a cross-party basis on that, which is why I've been in contact with all parties to set up initial meetings in that space. I know Mr Mara is keen to engage on these steps, and I'd be more than happy to engage with the member on this too. We have to work together and collaboratively on how we respond to this, and I think that is the most appropriate and responsible action that a government can take.
Murdo Fraser.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. When I asked in this chamber last week how the black hole would be filled, the Cabinet Secretary for Public Service Reform replied to me and said it would be public service reform that would fill the gap. But at the same time, he's saying that public service reform is not about reducing the overall spend on public services. Both these statements can't be true at the same time. So which is it?
Deputy First Minister.
I hear Mr McKee disagreeing with the member's suggestion or description rather of his contribution last week. Look, as I said to the member previously, we do have to work on a cross-party basis on this, and I'm more than happy to hear any suggestions that Murdo Fraser might have. Of course, the budget-setting process in Scotland would be a lot better had there, of course, not been a mini-budget introduced by Liz Truss, which has made things far more challenging. And of course, had we adhered to some of the tax cuts that Ms Truss was advocating for some time ago now, we would be poorer to the tune of £1.8 billion. But again, I'm more than happy to take any further learning that Mr Fraser can offer the Scottish Government on these matters.
Michael Mara.
Thank you, President Officer. The Deputy First Minister says she met with the Institute for Fiscal Studies last week to understand what learnings they might take. Perhaps could you tell us what they are?
Deputy First Minister.
I thank Mr Maher for his question. There's actually going to be a follow-up meeting over the summer recess on that. There are a number of learnings in relation to health and social care, actually, in relation to the use of technology and actually our use of capital across government. We had an introductory meeting of around 30 minutes, so I'm more than happy to come back to the member with further detail in that regard, because I want to continue that dialogue with the IFS. I think it's hugely important. We listen to this and we act accordingly because of the challenge that is recognised across the Chamber in relation to our budget.
Question number 5, Pauline Stafford.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I refer members to my register of interest as an elected member for West Lothian Council to ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on its work with West Lothian Council and other local authorities on plans to unlock pension fund assets, including local authority pension schemes, to deliver more affordable housing?
Minister.
Thank you for the question. I think this is a really interesting question. There are 11 local government pension schemes across Scotland worth about £75 billion, consistently outperforming the UK peers when it comes to the last decade as well. And I think that this is something that we should be doing more of, exploring how we can invest from Scotland to Scotland and have a bit of a recycle on that capital. We will continue to work with them, the Council in West Lothian, in pursuit of our manifesto commitment to deliver and progress funding models that safeguard fiduciary duties and long-term investments of pension schemes, members, and accelerate the delivery of social and affordable homes across Scotland. But let me just say that this requires an unprecedented level of commitment and investment, and that won't be done in isolation. That is private and public sector working together, and it also is government and also pension funds working together. So collaboration is the name of the game, and we need to think more creatively about accessing pools of capital to build the affordable housing that we need at scale.
Pauline Stafford.
Can I thank the Minister for that response? Given the acute demand for affordable housing in West Lothian in particular, can she outline when local authorities might expect to see tangible developments resulting from their work?
Minister.
Thank you. As set out in the manifesto for this parliamentary term, we will work in partnership, in collaboration with others, to progress funding models that safeguard these duties and provide secure inflation-linked returns that can accelerate the development of housing. Providing a timeframe is challenging at this moment. However, through the Affordable Housing Supply Programme, we're going to be investing up to £4.9 billion in affordable housing over the next 4 years, of which £4.1 billion will be in public investment, including £75 million being invested in West Lothian.
Duncan Massey.
Presiding Officer, may I just start with a transparency statement? I'm a member of the Pension Committee of Aberdeen City Council, but I just wanted to follow up with another question on that. In terms of pension funds investing in local housing, it was just a question about how we see the investment returns on those sort of investments and how those pension funds deal with their fiduciary duties, ensuring that they meet their first and foremost their needs of the pension holders themselves. Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you for the question. So, as I mentioned, this needs to be a mix of private and public investment, and also government and pension funds together. I was actually at a dinner last night where members of the SNIB, the Scottish National Investment Bank, were talking about the investment in 6 affordable houses in the Shetland Islands, which is my constituency, and how that had actually provided the most stable return that they have in their portfolio. So I think it's about making sure that we bring private and public together, and that we have that stability of return for pension funds that are seeking that stability over multiple years at an interest rate that is good for their portfolio.
Question number 6, Mark Ruskell.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government whether planning authorities have adequate guidance on how to assess proposed hyperscale AI data centres.
Minister.
Thank you for the question. Planning authorities have qualified planning officers who apply their professional analysis and judgment to inform decisions. Now, I recognise the speed and the scale of these hyperscale AI data centres in a very new and evolving part of our society. It provides risk, both in terms of upside but also downside, that needs to be considered. The National Planning Hub has been working with planning authorities, infrastructure providers and industry stakeholders to share an understanding of those benefits but also impacts. And we will continue this work with diligence and thought and time, whether we consider if there is more formal guidance that would be beneficial to a planning authority locally. And we'll need to make sure that those local authorities are appropriately supported in the assessment of these data centres coming.
Mark Ruskell.
Well, can I thank the Minister for that answer? It is a new and rapidly evolving situation. I hope that she recognises that, because there have been huge concerns raised about the proposed data centre at Auchtertool and Fife. Its size, its proximity to the village, the energy and water demand, and the fact that Fife Council have not requested that an environmental impact assessment be conducted. Now, I hear what she says about time, but given the lack of specific guidance and also the inconsistencies that we're seeing across local planning authorities in Scotland, will the Minister commit to urgently reviewing and updating planning guidance to ensure that the full impact of these AI data centres are being considered? This is a problem that exists now, not in the future. Planning authorities need to make proper decisions now.
Minister.
Thank you for the question. AI data centres are a very rapidly evolving sector. It would not be appropriate for the Scottish Government to comment on individual development proposals to make sure that we avoid having that favouritism. The Scottish Government is clear that the voices of communities affected by these kinds of development must be central in any considerations, and that also planning authorities have a responsibility to consider the environmental impacts of all developments which require planning permission. The Scottish Government is also clear that any new AI infrastructure development should minimise reliance on fossil fuel solutions. So our AI strategy for Scotland is clear that data centre development should include steps to assess and mitigate potential risks of infrastructure, including to the relation of environmental sustainability.
Claire Baker.
Thank you. The Scottish Government's AI strategy does have a clear aim of promoting Scotland as a green data centre, but it is less clear on what the terms mean in practice. It says guidance on what factors are prevalent in a green data centre will be expected in 2027. And, for example, would that include the necessity to have an environmental impact assessment? Because at the moment, my understanding is that is not a necessity. And does the Minister think that the timescale we're working towards, is that still appropriate, given the number of projects that are already seeking planning permission that are in principle?
Minister.
The member will appreciate that there are local planning decisions that I cannot comment on from a government perspective. And to be honest, this is a matter devolved to Fife Council on planning. So I would put that back, that this has to be the Fife Council that consider that.
Julie McDougall.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I firmly believe that Scotland can't be left behind in the new digital age. However, this should not come at a direct cost to the environment or local communities without seeing any substantial benefits to them. Many parts of Fife have been hit badly by deindustrialisation, with generations of people struggling with unemployment and underemployment. So does the Scottish Government agree with me that if these data centres do go ahead, that the sufficient creation of permanent full-time jobs with upskilling opportunities for local workers should form part of the conditions for granting planning permission to these data centres? Thank you.
Minister.
I thank the member for the additional question, and of course economic growth, job creation and benefit within communities that are hosting infrastructure projects such as data centres have to be front and centre. When it comes to planning and using planning as a tool, This is something that I am starting to explore within my portfolio. I had a meeting with planning officials yesterday. I'm still to get my head around exactly what can be done on that, but I am sympathetic to using planning as more of a tool to actually stimulate the kind of growth, the kind of benefits that you're talking about. Because I think that if we look at what the devolved powers are here, planning is a tool that we could be using to our advantage. So I'll be taking that on board as I continue to have my own thoughts and questions around that. It's something I don't have an answer on yet, but it is in my agenda and in my mind. Thank you.
Duncan Dunlop.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Similar to Mark Ruskell's data centre in Fife, there is a 150-hectare data centre which covers an area that would be larger than 200 football pitches proposed for the wilderness of the Lammermuir Hills in the Borders. In the absence of a Scottish Government strategy for locating energy-intensive industries, communities are being left to fight ad hoc developments with potentially irreversible environmental impacts. Does the Minister agree that industrial projects like this belong in industrial areas, not in our pristine wilderness?
Minister.
Again, I'm not going to comment on specific council planning applications that are going through, but I think that there is a difference between industrialisation and industry. And especially in areas of the Highlands and Islands, it's clear that you can have industry coexisting alongside communities and nature and built heritage. And it's about making sure that we equip local authorities with resources and appropriate funding from our side to be able to handle this as we go forward. So I think it's inappropriate for me to comment on individual cases, but I am sympathetic to your point about the difference between industrialisation and industry, because it does come at a balance that needs to be struck, especially in rural and island communities.
Question number 7, Andrew Baxter.
May I direct members to my register of interest as a Highland councillor to ask the Scottish Government what engagement it has had with COSLA and local authorities regarding how its proposed Better Surfaces Fund will be allocated.
Deputy First Minister.
Presiding Officer, the Scottish Government will work in partnership with COSLA to design a fund that provides flexibility and empowers individual local authorities to improve their road conditions and connectivity based on their local needs and priorities. I undertook an introductory meeting with COSLA on the 28th of May, and I will meet again, as previously intimated, with COSLA, along with the Cabinet Secretary for Public Service Reform, next Thursday, the 18th of June.
Andrew Baxter.
I thank the Deputy First Minister. The Highland Council has an identified roads repair backlog of £233 million, yet only £22.5 million is being allocated to capital road improvements this year. Across Skye, the Harbour and the wider Highlands, residents and businesses are seeing roads deteriorate at an alarming rate. Before the Deputy First Minister heads off on her summer holiday, will she join me on a road trip to Skye to see the reality for herself and explain why the Better Surfaces Fund will be anything more than a drop of tar in an ever-growing potholes?
Deputy First Minister.
I thank Mr Baxter for his question. I've been to Skye many times. I'm more than happy to come again and visit his roads. But I do want to put on the record, though, that the local road networks, of course, is the responsibility of Highland Council. And it is the case that Highland Council have had an uplift in relation to their funding from Scottish Government. In 26-27, they will receive £665.1 million to fund local services, which equates to an extra £32.3 million, or an additional 5.1% compared to the previous financial year. So the allocation of capital is a matter for the authority itself, and I think it is important to put that on the record. But of course, the Government's budget last year also delivers in full on a number of asks from island authorities, including the member's constituency, to provide extra funding and resource for capital inter-island connectivity, recognising the importance of rural roads in particular.
Question number 8, Jackie Bailey.
To ask the Scottish Government, in light of the 2026 SNP manifesto commitment of £10 billion in capital spending on health, including community health and care hubs, when it will allocate funding to build a new Dumbarton Health Centre.
Deputy First Minister.
Presiding Officer, £10 billion of capital investment in health infrastructure is planned over the next decade. Work is underway already to develop a standardised approach to the planning, design and delivery of projects, announced within the infrastructure delivery pipeline, which was announced back in January 26. The first tranche of projects is currently being progressed. Dumbarton Health Centre is recognised as a priority within NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde's primary care estate. Decisions on the allocation and the timing of funding for subsequent projects, including Dumbarton, will be taken as a part of future phases of the infrastructure and investment programme. I do, however, expect to receive further advice from my officials on the next stages in the coming weeks, and I'd be happy to provide further update on that to Ms Bailey at that time.
Jackie Bailey.
Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for her response? The former Cabinet Secretary for Health actually visited Dumbarton Health Centre with me earlier this year and agreed that Greater Glasgow and Clyde Health Board would consider that as an equal priority to a health centre in Port Glasgow. Can the Cabinet Secretary tell me when there will actually be shovels in the ground? Because a response to an earlier parliamentary question suggested it could be as late as 5 years from now.
Deputy First Minister.
I thank Ms Bailey for her question. I can't give her a specific date at the current time as I'm awaiting advice on this from my officials, but I'm more than happy to correspond with her in relation to the challenge that she puts to me here today. But I do hope she recognises there is significant investment being put in place to support projects just like the one she's outlined today. But I'm more than happy to write to her with further detail when I've received it myself.
Question number 9, Claire Hawhey.
To ask the Scottish Government how it is supporting businesses on Scotland's high streets.
Minister.
Thank you for the question. High streets are vital to our economy and our town centres, especially in rural and island contexts. The Scottish Budget reduces all 3 property rates and offers a package of reliefs forecast to save ratepayers over £870 million in the 2026-27 budget. The Small Business Bonus Scheme remains the most generous scheme of its kind in the UK, and we estimate that 96% of retail, hospitality, leisure businesses could benefit from some form of relief in 2026-2027. As I say, the engagement that I'm going to be having with business communities before summer is something that is high on my agenda and something I look forward to kicking off, which also includes high street focus as well.
Claire Hawhey.
I thank the Minister for that answer. My constituency of Rutherglen and Cambuslang is home to many small and medium-sized businesses who make a significant contribution to the local economy and provide a wide variety of specialist services and goods. However, local high streets like ours have been blighted by the presence of vacant shops in recent years. How are the Scottish Government working with local authorities and other partners to support bringing vacant premises back into use and encouraging more footfall in our town centres?
Minister.
I thank Ms Hawkey for that question. Our package of non-domestic rates includes the Small Business Bonus Scheme, which remains the most generous of its kind within the UK. Fresh Start, as repeated earlier, it is a relief to incentivise the reoccupation of long-term empty non-domestic properties, including on many high streets across Scotland. And the Business Growth Accelerator Relief, offering relief on new builds and property improvements. Local authorities also have wide-ranging powers to create local rates relief schemes to reflect local needs. And that is something that, as elected members here, we should be encouraging our local authorities to make full use of. I would also like to take this opportunity to remind everyone that actually next week is the annual Scotland Loves Local Week. So I urge everybody to get out to your local high street, go out, meet members, meet shop owners, speak to them, interact, give some prominence and some social media content and visibility to the many, many dedicated shops that we have on our high streets across Scotland.
Question number 10 has been withdrawn. We now move on to the next portfolio set of questions. The next portfolio is Public Sector Reform, Europe, External Affairs and Energy. Again, if a member wishes to request a supplementary question, they should press their request to speak button during the relevant question. And I noticed a number of members in the last session didn't keep their request to speak button down all of the time during the question, and it wasn't clear whether they wanted to be chosen or not. So if you want to speak, please make sure that you keep the button pressed down. Number 1, David Barrett.
Thank you. I refer to my register of interests, which will show I'm a councillor in Fife, to ask the Scottish Government what work is being done to ensure that regulatory and consenting frameworks support the development of low-carbon heat recovery technologies from rivers, estuaries and coastal waters.
Stephen Gethins.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Can I firstly thank Mr Barrett for his question and also acknowledge the expertise that he brings to the Chamber on the issue that will enrich our discussions and debates. The Scottish Government aims to capitalise on the thermal energy found in a range of sources so that it can be distributed to homes and businesses through heat networks at an affordable cost, and we've developed detailed guidance with the UK Government to support all parties with this, and this will be published shortly.
David Barrett.
I thank the Minister for his response. Research suggests that there is a near limitless supply of heat available from our coastal waters. One project exploring this is the Forth 2.0 Sustainable Heat Project, a partnership between Seawarm, the University of Edinburgh, City of Edinburgh Council, East Lothian Council and Fife Council. It has been identified that the cost and complexities of consenting are adding almost a year to the project delivery timescales and up to 20% to the cost of the innovative technology. Will the Scottish Government commit to reviewing the current fragmented consenting process for small-scale water source heat projects, where a single installation may require permissions from multiple authorities despite supporting Scotland's net zero and affordable heat objectives? And will the Minister meet with partners for the Forth 2.0 Sustainable Heat Project to discuss this further?
Stephen Gethins.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer, and thank Mr Barrett for his question and for his engagement on this. This is an important project as we transition to a net zero economy. It will become increasingly important that we use resources efficiently. This includes maximising the recovery of heat from various sources, which is currently going unused. And if the member would like to write to me with the people that he'd like me to meet, I'd be delighted to meet with him, and after which the Scottish Government can consider their findings. Thank you.
Question number 2, Mark Simpson.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what action it is taking to address staffing pressures across the prison estate through its programme of public sector reform.
Cabinet Secretary.
The prison estate is currently facing unprecedented pressures due to the record high prison population, and our prison staff are working with dedication and resilience in challenging circumstances. The 2026-27 budget provides a £20.8 million resource funding uplift for the prison service, and their pay deal delivers an 8% increase over 2 years. Recruitment is continuing at pace to deliver up to 500 new prison officers this year. The Public Service Reform Strategy sets out a clear direction for modernising the workforce with transformation at its core. It supports a shift in operating models with a focus on efficiency, collaboration and protecting frontline workers, including our prisons.
Mark Simpson.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for the reply. Given that staffing shortages can lead to reduced access to education, rehabilitation programmes, purposeful activity for those in custody, has the Cabinet Secretary considered the long-term effects of this issue? And will he outline what plans are in place to address these both within the prison service and across the wider public sector?
Cabinet Secretary.
No, absolutely recognise that. Of course, my colleague, the Cabinet Secretary for Justice, is working on these steps. But as I've already indicated, the prison service is significantly increasing staffing, up to 500 this year, and over 800 new officers having joined over the past 2 years, and that recruitment continues. And of course, we recognise the pressures from our record-high prison population, and that's why we're working with the prison service, taking forward a number of actions in response to this issue, including expanding capacity, investing in community justice and reducing demand through alternatives to custody.
Don Black.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer, and thank you for the detail that you've already given, Cabinet Secretary. But could you also outline what more can be done to use the public service reform agenda to encourage staff to move outside of the Central Belt and into other regions and areas where they are needed, such as the new His Majesty's Prison Inverness, which will require an increase in staff?
Cabinet Secretary.
Public service reform gives us the tools to better match staff to where they are most needed, and the strategy includes commitments on strengthening leadership and on workforce reform to ensure we have the right number of people in the right roles with the right incentives and empowerment to deliver change. The forthcoming workforce management governance framework will include good practice guidance on recruitment and redeployment, and that means supporting staff to move into priority roles, including in areas like the Highlands. For HMP Highland, which will replace HMP Inverness, this includes targeted local recruitment, outreach with partners and encouraging experienced staff to transfer, ensuring both community benefit and a safe, resilient service.
Question number 3, Jamie Langan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what assessment is made of whether farmers and producers in Scotland are better served and protected within the single market of the United Kingdom rather than operating in a European market.
Minister.
Thank Deputy Presiding Officer. Of course, previously it wasn't an either-or. When we were in the EU, our farmers were able to benefit from free access to an EU market of 450 million consumers, with funding stability provided by CAP and much more. Brexit, that his party campaigned for and wanted, was a costly mistake, and our agri-food industry has suffered as a result. The UK Internal Market Act, far from helping ensure a functioning domestic market, is a recipe for confusion and uncertainty. We strongly support a closer relationship with the EU, including on agri-food, to help businesses access the EU market, expand consumer choice and sustain Scotland's agri-food sector. Best way to do that, of course, is with independence.
Jamie Langan.
Could I thank the Minister for his response, but ask if he recognises the serious challenges currently facing the Scottish pig farming industry due to the glut of Spanish pork imports depressing prices? And can he confirm what work the Scottish Government has undertaken with the UK Government to address these challenges?
Minister.
I'm going to thank the member for his question, and I'll write to him more broadly on the specific issues, but I would set out the hit that consumers, that businesses, including agriculture, have taken from leaving the EU, including a Treasury hit of £90 billion less in tax revenues. That's £250 million being wasted every single day, and UK food exports to the EU well below pre-Brexit levels. It's been a disaster. It's the 10th anniversary next week, and in a couple of weeks' time, and I hope that they'll reflect on that.
Question number 4, Liam Kerr.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what assessment it has made of Scotland's energy security, including any consequent action it plans to take in light of heightened global tensions, particularly in the Middle East and Ukraine.
Minister.
Thank Liam Kerr for his question. The ongoing conflict in the Middle East and, of course, Russia's war in Ukraine has brought Scotland's energy security into sharp focus. Our assessment remains that on the current information available to us, Scotland's position in relation to energy security remains robust. But despite this, and as a responsible government, we continue to monitor the current situation and prepare for any disruption. We're also continuing to pursue engagement with the UK Government to assess risks, share intelligence and ensure Scotland's energy security remains resilient, and to inform our planning.
Liam Kerr.
Well, I'd like to help the Minister in that regard. You see, it's reported today that if the largest undeveloped oil and gas field in the UK, Rosebank, is given the go-ahead, it will generate £8.5 billion worth of direct investment, £6.6 billion of that spent on UK businesses. It will support 2,000 jobs during development alone and help our energy security. Now, the SNP has maintained a presumption against oil and gas for years now, and it was confirmed by this government again in Politico this week. But for the sake of energy security, for thousands of Scottish jobs, for the environment and for the economy, will the Minister join me in demanding that Ed Miliband give Rosebank the green light?
Minister.
I'd like to thank the member for his question. It is, of course, as he knows, a reserved issue to the Westminster Parliament, but I'm glad that we're able to discuss reserved issues in this place as well. And on the question of energy security, that, of course, is one of the tests that we apply, as well as the climate, when considering these options. But I have to say it takes something of a brass neck for the Conservatives to come here and lecture anybody about the oil and gas industry, given the thousands of jobs lost on their watch.
David Green.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. The Minister will no doubt agree that our energy security must be considered alongside our climate obligations. But that's why I would urge the Scottish Government to recognise the advice of the Climate Change Committee when they say that nuclear is essential to the UK's decarbonised electricity mix. I also urge the Minister to recognise that decommissioning in Scotland, including at Dounreay in my constituency, depends on retaining those skills in the long term. Will he therefore agree to visit Dounreay, meet our nuclear workforce and address those concerns that his government's opposition to new nuclear sends them a message that their future lies elsewhere?
Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Well, the first thing that I'll say to the member is I'd obviously be delighted to visit him in his constituency, and he's obviously a champion for his constituency. Scotland is an energy exporter with excellence in renewables and in other industries. Nuclear has been proven to be a very expensive technology. That being said, I will commit, as I said at the start, to engage with members and speak to them. We can always learn something from one another. Thank you.
Alan Brown.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Grangemouth provided aviation fuel and could have been used to develop sustainable aviation fuel for the future. Does the Cabinet Secretary share my concern that by letting it close and now pandering to Putin to allow for aviation fuel, then the UK Labour government has actually actively chosen to weaken energy security in the UK and have lost opportunities to strengthen our domestic capabilities for the future?
Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Alan Brown is absolutely right to raise this, and of course Labour committed in the 24 election campaign to save the Grangemouth refinery. Alan Brown and I agree that Scotland has a huge role to play in energy security, not just for Scotland, but also pan-European energy security that Labour have been turning their back on, along with their colleagues in Reform as well. Now, the UK Government, 18 months ago, committed to providing £200 million worth of targeted support to Grangemouth, which has not been forthcoming, and we'll continue on that. On the questions of sanctions, he's absolutely right. We should have the maximum sanctions on Russia, and I was deeply concerned by the UK Government's recent action on that.
Patrick Harvey.
Is it not absolutely extraordinary that some people respond to a fossil fuel crisis which is sending prices spiralling through the roof by demanding that we double down and make ourselves even more dependent on fossil fuels and even more exposed to the next energy crisis that fossil fuels cause?
Minister.
Can I say to Patrick Harvey, I'm a great believer in the energy mix, and that as we make that just transition and we're investing in that just transition, there's a huge range of skills. But we are, as he knows, a massive exporter of renewables, and we can be a massive exporter of renewables to the whole of Europe as well. And Scotland's got an awful lot to offer when it comes not just to our own energy security, but that of our whole continent.
Question number 5, Liam MacArthur.
Thanks, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government how it's supporting the installation of electrical infrastructure in Orkney.
Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer, and thank the member for his question. Since my appointment as Minister, I've undertaken introductory meetings across the energy sector, and I'm clear that the energy transition represents one of our greatest economic opportunities, and I'll continue to hold those meetings over the coming weeks and over the summer, and I know that the members are champion for that as well. The Scottish Government has supported Orkney's ambitions for decarbonisation and electrification, including through providing £5 million to support the development of a harbour facility for the assembly of offshore wind turbines at Scapa Flow.
Liam MacArthur.
Can I thank the Minister for that response and welcome the advances he's made in the early days in the role. But earlier this year, the electricity cable serving North Ronaldsay in Orkney developed a fault which cannot be fixed. SSEN have confirmed that a new cable will be needed. Given the impact on my constituents, I hope the Minister will agree that consenting the new cable should be done as quickly as possible. But will he also agree to ensure that the fibre within the cable is now used to provide long overdue digital connectivity and resilience to the residents of North Ronaldsay?
Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Can I thank the member for his question and genuinely the work that he's done on this for years on behalf of his constituents. He won't expect me to comment on consents, nor would Mr McKee sitting next to me. But given the vast potential that Orkney has, and as my colleague from Shetland will say across the Northern Isles has, I'd be very willing to engage with the member and to continuing to engage with them to ensure that Orkney, like elsewhere, is fulfilling the clear potential it has in renewables.
Laura Mitchell.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Orkney and communities across the Highlands and Islands will play a key role in Scotland's renewable energy future, but new projects in the region are being unfairly disadvantaged by Westminster's transmission charging regime, costing Scottish renewable projects £1 billion. Does the Minister agree that if Labour ministers are serious about growing renewable energy in Scotland, they must scrap these unfair transmission charges immediately, or get out of the way and give Scotland the power to control our own energy?
Minister.
Thank you. I absolutely agree with Laura Mitchell, who already in this Parliament has been a strong advocate for jobs and investment in her constituency. What we've seen is unfair penalisation through the current tenure system, and according to the figures that we saw at the weekend, transmission charges could cost Scottish projects almost £1 billion up to 2030-31, while projects in England and Wales will be paid £435 million to connect. That policy that Labour must review is holding back our sector, and Laura Mitchell is quite right to be a champion for her communities in that.
Question number 6, Martin Day.
To ask the Scottish Government, in light of recent reports of aviation fuel supply issues at Edinburgh and Glasgow airports, what discussions has it had with the UK Government regarding future fuel security and the fuel supply chain?
Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Obviously, the recent fuel supply issue experienced by both Glasgow and Edinburgh airports was due to a logistical issue. But although that issue has been swiftly rectified, I recognise the inconvenience the disruption will have caused to passengers. Now, we continually seek to engage with the UK Government regarding issues of fuel security, as well as remaining in contact with key industry stakeholders. But bluntly, we need the UK Government to recognise Scotland's potential and sometimes just be a bit more forthcoming on information sharing.
Martin Day.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that reply. This issue underlines how precarious Scotland's position has become on jet fuel supplies. Before its closure, Grangemouth refined jet fuel for the whole of Scotland, giving us a measure of energy security. But the betrayal of the workforce at Grangemouth and the false promises once made to them by Anas Sarwar have helped put paid to that. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree with Unite the Union, who have accused the UK Labour Government of industrial vandalism in allowing the Grangemouth refinery to close, when Scotland could have been producing its own green aviation fuel?
Minister.
I'd like to thank Martin Day for his question. Martin Day has been a strong advocate for many years for people in Grangemouth and for the industries there. Grangemouth is a prime location, including having the highly skilled workforce for the development and production of sustainable aviation fuels. Scotland is part of the solution when it comes to our energy security. But when I said that the UK had been less than forthcoming, the First Minister has, of course, had to write to the Prime Minister asking for more detail and greater security cooperation in the areas in which we still, I'm afraid, have to rely on the UK Government. Now, this Parliament has voted, this democratically elected Parliament has voted for those powers to be devolved, and I hope that that can provide part of the solution.
Question number 7, Jenny Minto.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government whether it plans to adopt a Tell Us Once approach to grant schemes such as Fair Work First across its departments to reduce the burden on individuals, organisations and businesses as part of its planned public service reform.
Cabinet Secretary.
Our public service reform strategy commits us to review and simplify reporting requirements for grant recipients, and this will include understanding how a Tell Us Once approach to grants could be implemented. Work is also underway to simplify the grant landscape across government and agencies to increase clarity and impact and reduce administration costs for government and indeed for grant recipients. On Fair Work First specifically, the Scottish Government has commissioned an independent evaluation, including around compliance and operational processes, and this is due to report this summer, and we will continue the recommendations, including any further improvements that could be made to administrative processes.
Jenny Minto.
Thank you, and I thank the Cabinet Secretary for his response. And I welcome the Scottish Government's commitment to fair work and fully support its underlying principles. However, smaller organisations, third sector bodies and social enterprises do not have the dedicated compliance or bid writing teams to cover the administrative burden of different funding streams. Could I therefore ask that the Cabinet Secretary meets with myself and Mull and Iona Community Trust to discuss what immediate, low-cost improvements could be made to the process in line with the Scottish Government's stated aims of efficiency, fairness and accessibility of grant funding?
Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you for the invitation. I'll be happy to meet with the member and representatives of the Trust. It will be helpful to hear about their direct experiences to inform our improvements, and I'm sure they'll chime very much with what I hear from community organisations in my own constituency. And the Government, of course, recognises the importance of community organisations, and frankly, we've got a duty to make those administration processes on those organisations as straightforward as possible, subject, of course, to appropriate safeguards. And this is a central part of the work in the PSR strategy. And on fair work, first I understand my colleague Tom Arthur is responding to you separately with respect to your request to meet with his officials in relation to Fair Work First, which I understand is also being arranged.
Question number 8 was not lodged. Question number 9, Gillian Mackay.
To ask the Scottish Government what its position is on banning the use of Prestwick Airport by the US military.
Minister.
I'd like to thank Gillian Mackay for her question. I know this is an issue she's raised previously. Gillian Mackay will understand that the Scottish Government must comply with the terms of the Scotland Act, which reserves national security, aviation and air transport, defence and foreign affairs to the UK Government. The Scottish Government has no power to ban flights from Scottish airspace or airports. Non-UK military flights using UK airspace need permission from the Ministry of Defence. That's frustrating, but unfortunately, the Scottish Government is not provided with information on the purpose of military flights using Scottish airports.
Gillian Mackay.
The US Government's partner in this aggression is, of course, the Israeli Government, and they have already been banned from using publicly owned Scottish infrastructure, including Prestwick Airport. During the last session of Parliament, this chamber passed a motion calling for boycott, divestment and sanction of Israel. We later found out that no work had even started on this proposal. So can I ask the Minister when we might see this package of measures coming forward?
Minister.
I'd like to thank the member for raising this and the attention that genuinely the attention that she's shown to this. I know she raised this with the First Minister previously. I am a great believer in the international rules-based system. I think it's under threat. I think it's been undermined. And although we don't have the full range of powers that we'd like, and that's frustrating, that we must adhere to that. Now, I'm perfectly willing to go, have a look at this in good faith, and I can write to the member about this particular issue. But I wish we had the full range of powers that we just do not have. And that's a source of frustration to me, as much it will be a source of frustration to Gillian Mackay.
Question number 10, Colette Stevenson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on its vision for public procurement, particularly in relation to supporting small businesses, social enterprises and local supply chains.
Cabinet Secretary.
Sustainability is central to public procurement. It's driving jobs and growth, generating £14.7 billion in economic activity, with £7.6 billion of that going to SMEs. Communities are benefiting. 78% of suppliers winning public contracts were SMEs, and 61% of those were Scottish SMEs. And the third sector are engaged with £1.2 billion of spend. Local impact is being delivered with £3.6 billion retained locally. And in this regard, Scotland leads the way. 47% of procurement spend in Scotland goes to SMEs, comparing very favourably with the UK's 20%, according to British Chamber of Commerce report. And reducing barriers remains a priority for the Government through the Supplier Development Programme, with 25,000 contracts awarded to registered suppliers.
Colette Stevenson.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that response, and as you highlighted, procurement offers great opportunities for small businesses and social enterprises, which in turn can boost local economies and well-being. And the Supplier Development Programme, which the host authorities, South Lanarkshire and Magpatch, worked so hard to support this. There's also a lot of potential to improve things, including in local supply chain development. One example of this is the use of locally sourced venison, a healthy, low-carbon food source which could be better used in hospitals, schools and other public sector organisations. Can the Cabinet Secretary outline how subcontractors will be further encouraged to get involved in large public sector contracts, as well as work to boost local supply chains, including food provision?
Cabinet Secretary.
Absolutely. I'm very happy to confirm that the legislation is in place that requires public bodies to consider opportunities to involve SMEs, third sector organisations and supported businesses. And for higher value contracts, this includes splitting contracts into smaller opportunities to make them more accessible for smaller businesses. Public Contracts Scotland alerts suppliers to relevant contracts and allows main contractors to advertise subcontracting opportunities down through the supply chains. And the flexibility public bodies have to promote local sustainable produce is underpinned in the National Good Food Nation Plan. Ms Stevenson gave the example of venison, and I'm very happy to confirm that we have provided funding to help build capability within the venison sector to improve and establish new supply chains.
Daniel Johnson.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I think there's broad consensus in this chamber about the need to develop Scotland's supply chains and using public procurement to do so. But I think in practice, especially on this side of the chamber, we felt that there's been an overly cautious view, especially with regard to the interpretation of the Subsidy Control Act. So I'd ask the Cabinet Secretary in his new role if he's going to re-examine the Scottish Government's interpretation, or indeed looking at how procurement processes and grant schemes can be redevised so that they don't fall foul of the Subsidy Control Act.
Cabinet Secretary.
So first of all, I'd point the member to the numbers I've gone through, because it's hugely important to recognise that Scotland is absolutely leading the way, with more than 47% of our public sector procurement going to SMEs, compared to only 20% across the rest of the UK. And that's hugely important to recognise the progress we have made there. But of course, as I've indicated, we're always keen to make more progress, to look for opportunities to be able to further expand the amount of procurement opportunities for SMEs, third sector supported businesses and others in our communities. With regards to subsidy control, that's always an area that we need to look closely at when we're taking decisions. And there are, I know I met with procurement officials this morning, and we talked about the work that they're undertaking with others across government to understand where those restrictions apply and where we can, where we're able to take steps that don't fall foul of those regulations. And that's something we'll continue to do to push the envelope as much as we can in this regard.
That concludes portfolio questions, and we now move on to next business.